Right, let us come to questions to Secretary of State for Education. Sir, agree.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am proud that while this government has made tough decisions, we have protected key education priorities with additional investment into breakfast clubs, rebuilding and improving our SEND system and much more. And after 14 years of decline, dither and delay, we are putting education back at the heart of national life, breaking down barriers to opportunity for every child in every community. In response to the Honourable Lady's specific question, exceptional funding will continue to be allocated through local authorities on a case-by-case basis.
Sir, agree.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer. Chesham Grammar School in my constituency has received exceptional funding from the Department for some years now to facilitate the hire of the neighbouring leisure centre sports hall for PE lessons. This year their application has been denied, but the school's circumstances haven't changed. They still have no on-site sports hall and still need to fund the £65,000 hiring fees each year. Would the Minister meet with me to discuss this particular case to ensure the students of Chesham Grammar School have access to the PE curriculum the school is required to provide come September?
Minister.
I would be happy to arrange for a meeting for the Honourable Lady to discuss this matter further. Buckinghamshire requested for local authority-owned facility to be funded, and in line with the published guidance, rental costs for local authority-owned facilities are out of scope of the exceptional funding, but local authorities should organise such provision within the cost availability for schools, and I'll be happy to discuss it further.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Too many children in Southall go to school hungry, so I'm delighted that the Chancellor and this Labour government has chosen to triple investment in breakfast clubs. And some of the first free breakfast clubs will open in my constituency at Blair Peach and Wolffields Primary School in Southall. Does the Minister agree that children learn better with a full stomach?
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right, which is why we are focusing our investment on breakfast clubs and ensuring that children not only get that good start to the day with a full belly, but also get the support of a club that will help them achieve and thrive too.
Sir, Bool.
Question number 2, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last month, Labour announced the first wave of primary schools set to offer new free breakfast clubs. We were delighted that over 3,000 schools applied to be early adopters, and 750 of those schools will start delivering from the summer term, meaning children will start the day ready to learn and parents will save up to £450. While Conservative members opposite can't bring themselves to welcome the clubs, Labour is boosting parents' work choices and children's life chances.
Sir, Bool.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Primary schools have been forced to pull out or take a financial hit in order to participate in this pilot. Does she really believe the basic funding rate of breakfast is 60p?
Mr Speaker, no, I don't, because that isn't actually the case, and I'm afraid that's not the only area where the Honourable Lady is mistaken. The party opposite should swallow their pride, welcome the breakfast clubs that will transform the life chances of children across our country, are incredibly popular with parents and will make sure that all of our children get a brilliant start to the school day.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I refer members to my register of interests, and I welcome the interest in breakfast clubs from members opposite. But can the Secretary of State please confirm that all primary schools and all primary school students will be in receipt of breakfast clubs by the end of this Parliament?
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I recognise the incredible work that the early adopters will be taking forward, but it is the case that all primary schools will offer a universal free breakfast club under this Labour government, and members opposite can raise all they like the previous schemes that they left behind that were far less generous. It is this Labour government that is trebling investment in breakfast clubs.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Number 3.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Labour's RISE teams have hit the ground running. The first wave of advisers, professionals with a proven track record of driving up standards, are now drawing up improvement plans with schools. The Tories left over 600 stuck schools, teaching over 300,000 children with no plan for improvement. Labour will drive high and rising standards, turning these schools around and creating a system where every child can achieve and thrive.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In my area, the Government has identified 6 stuck schools in Cheshire East and 2 in Cheshire West. Can the Minister explain the support that will be made available to them to drive up standards and what levers they have if schools choose not to follow the RISE team's advice?
Universal support will be available to all schools to drive up standards, but we do expect all schools to engage in mandatory targeted RISE intervention, and we will not hesitate to act where there are concerns. We will not stand by as children pass through schools that are not delivering year after year, unlike the last Conservative government.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the South West, attainment gaps are the largest across the primary and secondary school sector in England. In the past, of course, local authority used to play a very big role in improving education. What plans has the government got for local authorities to be involved in closing that attainment gap?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. She is right to identify the disadvantage gaps that exist in many parts of the country and the challenge she identifies in her part of the country. We do believe that local authorities have an important role to play working together with trust leaders and with others to drive up standards. It's why through the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill we are bringing forward measures to ensure that the system works together much more effectively, including in areas such as admissions and place planning.
Question number 5, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Under the Tories, young people felt underprepared for their futures and employers agreed with them. Too many leaving school, lacking the skills needed in the modern workplace, ill-equipped for an ever-changing world. Through the Independent Curriculum and Assessment Review, Labour will bring forward a cutting-edge curriculum that ensures all our children leave school ready for work and ready for life. And the interim report will be published in the spring.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parents and pupils will think that ministers are on another planet if they hear answers like that. SATs in years 2 and 6 mean primary schools are held accountable and we can measure progress data through secondary education. But the National Education Union says SATs, quote, do not benefit learning and wants the government to abolish them. Will the Minister rule out abolishing SATs in primary schools, yes or no?
Assessment clearly has an important role to play in supporting achievement and supporting development within schools also. We will consider how the reformed curriculum and assessment will affect schools, and we recognise the importance of supporting schools with any changes that come forward in the interim and the final report.
Alistair Strathern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. From the rise of Andrew Tate to the re-emergence of Tommy Robinson, lots of young people I speak to are concerned about the level of extremism and conspiracy theories they're encountering online. A really important report from Public First and the Pears Foundation last month highlighted the need to do more to empower our schools and teachers to tackle this in the classroom. So how will we be using the curriculum review to make sure we make the most of this moment to empower young people to feel safer on online spaces?
Absolutely.
The Honourable Gentleman raises a really important point, and we are already providing guidance and resources to help and support teachers to recognise some of these challenges, to intervene swiftly where necessary, and to not tolerate a culture where that excuses harm or the experiences of women. So schools have to be places where all young people can thrive and be ready for work and life, and we'll ensure that the curriculum and assessment review reflects that.
Neil O'Brien, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. One reason why England's schools rose up the international league tables over recent years is that they've been spending more time on the core academic subjects like English and maths. And having fallen sharply under the last Labour government, the share of pupils who are doing double or triple science at GCSE has gone up from 70% to 98%. So can the Minister reassure the House that time will not be taken away from the core academic subjects as a result of this review and that their content won't be cut back as a result of this curriculum review?
The government entered office to unprecedented challenges, crumbling public services, crippling public finances. And in the face of a significant black hole in finances, we are taking tough decisions to fix the foundations, but we are protecting key education priorities, rebuilding schools, including rolling out breakfast clubs, and we'll continue to do so.
Question number 6, Mr Speaker.
Front bench. 6. Minister.
Apologies, Mr Speaker. With permission, I'll answer questions 6 and 16 together. The government inherited a lose-lose-lose SEND situation, with the Tories describing it as such in their own words, the Deputy Chief Whip saying they should hang their heads in shame over what they left behind. Since entering government, Labour has restructured the department to put SEND at its heart. We've invested £1 billion into services, £740 million to create additional specialist places, but we're under no illusion the reform to the system is desperately needed, and we brought on expert advisers to help us achieve that.
Well, Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that answer. In London alone, the estimate is that the current year there's a deficit of £313.8 million, and that deficit will grow unless more money is put in to £502 million in the following year. Now, clearly there's a problem here which we need to address, because it's ideal that those with special educational needs are taught in mainstream education. However, it's much cheaper for local authorities, rather than sending children outside of their boroughs to another more expensive borough, to have in-house provision and special needs schools in the borough. Harrow was granted a new special educational needs school under the last government. Will the Minister confirm that will proceed, because it has the support of all the head teachers at a cross-party basis?
The honourable gentleman describes the challenge that has risen up after 14 years under his previous government, and we do absolutely recognise the strain that the rising costs of SEND provision are putting on local government, and which is why we will be setting out plans for reforming the SEND system with further details this year, including how local authorities will be supported to manage their historic and accruing deficits, and decisions in relation to new school provision and buildings will also be made in due course.
Honourable Lane.
Has the Minister's Department given due consideration to updating the allocation policy, which is currently based on historic funding and leaves boroughs like Barking and Dagenham at disadvantage for SEN provision compared to inner London boroughs?
The structure of the high needs funding formula is largely unchanged in 25 to 26 as we take time to consider what changes might be necessary to make sure we do have a fair system that does direct funding to where it's needed and will support our future SEND reforms, and will continue to consider whether changes to the formula will be required. But I know the Secretary of State visited a school in Dagenham in December and saw the excellent work firsthand and the difference that they are making to children with special educational needs in her area.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I draw members' attention to my register of interest. I have a school in my constituency who is very good at helping students with EHCP plans, so much so it is now struggling with the amount of students it has now got with EHCP plans. EHCP plans, sorry. Would the Minister meet with me to discuss this issue and wider SEND issues with my constituency of Broxbourne?
The government wants to ensure that education, health and care plans are issued quickly to help children and young people achieve and thrive. And I know that officials in our department work continuously with local authorities to support where there are issues with timeliness, to make sure we have effective recovery plans in place. And I'm sure a meeting could be arranged for him to discuss the particular concerns in his area in more detail.
Chair of the Select Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The deep crisis in our SEND system, which is both a crisis of funding and a crisis of delivery, letting down far too many children, requires urgent action. Can the Minister update the House on the timing of the Government's plans for SEND? And can she provide assurances that there will be full engagement with parents, professionals and young people with SEND on any such plans?
We do recognise the unprecedented pressures that local authorities are under, and indeed families also, that want the best for their children, the best education possible, and a system that does not currently deliver that as quickly or as thoroughly as it should. I can confirm that we will be announcing more details of reform plans this year, and will, of course, and do on a continuous basis, consult with families, representatives of families, local authorities, and indeed will work closely with her committee also.
George Freeman.
Across the 46 schools in mid-Norfolk, SEND provision is the #1 issue for both parents and teachers and staff. Contrary to the party political broadcast opposite, in the last 14 years, I was lucky to secure £7 million from the Conservative Coalition for a new school and Conservative County Council funding for a new school in Swaffham. Officials in DFE have also been very constructive in working on a pathfinder for rural hub and spoke support. parents in rural areas really struggle. Can I ask what ministers are doing to take that forward, to support small rural schools so they can access the specialist help in hubs?
I know the honourable gentleman raises his concern in all sincerity, which is why we will continue to work with all partners, parents, teachers, local authorities and indeed the NHS also in how we reform our SEND system and ensure that the support that is needed reaches every part in every community. And our ambition is for a more inclusive mainstream school system that draws on the right education and health specialists to make sure that every child receives the support that they deserve.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Far too many children with complex learning disabilities and autism who've been failed by the system end up not having a place in their local community but end up in institutions, and disproportionately more black children, which are very synonymous with the 60s and 70s when they were classified as educational subnormal. So can the Minister explain what work's been doing to identify the number of children that have been institutionalised and what work has been undertaken to review and amend those situations?
I know that this is an issue that is very important to the Honourable Lady, and she quite rightly has been raising it through a number of avenues, and I will continue to work with her on this issue to ensure that we learn from the past, to make sure that as we reform our SEND system, it is fit for purpose, it serves every child, and that we learn from issues in the past where far too many children have been let down.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Manira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Some of the huge cost pressures on SEND budgets are being driven by the lack of state special school places, with many councils forced to send children with complex needs to private special schools, which can cost 2 to 3 times more than local authority provision. Mr. Speaker, there are many brilliant independent special schools providing value for money, yet we know some private equity firms are profiteering with upwards of 20% profit margins from schools they run. So why won't ministers back Liberal Democrat amendments to the Children's Wellbeing Bill to include special schools in their proposed profit cap backstop for children's social care providers?
The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is a landmark piece of legislation that she knows brings forward really important changes that will keep children safe, but also reform our school system to ensure it does serve all. We are focused on improving inclusivity and expertise in mainstream schools and ensuring that we do have special schools that can cater for those with the most complex needs. Our priority is restoring trust that parents should have, that their child will get the support they need, and we will do all that's necessary as part of our SEND reforms to ensure that is delivered.
Will Stone.
Question number 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Department values the Institutes of Technology's approach by bringing together education and industry to develop and deliver curricula related to local employers in creating sustainable pathways for talent development. We'll continue working with IoTs, including the Swindon and Wiltshire's IoT, in developing our strategy for post-16 skills.
Will Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her response. Would she consider meeting with me so we can work together on growing IoTs like Swindon, especially with their degree awarding powers? Thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. The IoTs bring together further education and higher education providers to deliver higher level technical qualifications, including degrees and apprenticeships. And I could indeed offer to meet with him, but I'm sure he would much prefer to meet with my noble friend, the Skills Minister from the other place, and I will raise this request with her.
Becca's.
Mr. Speaker. The Stimulating Physics Network has been working to improve the knowledge, skills and confidence of non-specialist science teachers in secondary schools with outstanding results. 6% more A-level physics entrants and 29% more girls compared to 13% in schools that do not take part. However, funding for this scheme has been cancelled from the 31st of March. A considerable problem, Mr. Speaker, for constituencies like mine which has need for STEM skills due to the defence sector. What plans does the Minister have to fill the gap left by SPN to ensure the value of physics teaching in schools is maintained and to reassure teachers like my constituent Tom who have been committed to delivering SPN?
We absolutely support girls and young women into STEM subjects. It's interesting that the party opposite did funding mid-year, which is very unusual. Difficult decisions need to be made, despite, as I'm sure the party opposite will be aware, because of the difficult fiscal situation that has been inherited by this government. We'll continue to do more for girls to get into STEM subjects, and we're absolutely committed to this.
Absolutely.
Question 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
Stop.
High and rising school standards with excellent foundations in reading, writing and maths is a key part of our plan for change to ensure that every child gets the best start in life. Reading for pleasure is hugely important. Last month, Labour announced £2 million of investment to driving high and rising standards by embedding the success of phonics, ensuring that children and teachers are developing those reading skills, including reading for pleasure.
Phillipson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Growing up in the 1980s, my nose was always buried in a book, and I let my imagination run wild. Nowadays, 9 in 10 children will have a mobile phone by the time they reach the age of 11. And the statistics show that there's been a steep decline in the number of children reading for pleasure. So could I ask the Minister, does she agree with me that the likes of Roald Dahl and Jacqueline Wilson should not be replaced by a smartphone? And could she ask, will she prioritise reading for pleasure for children in the school curriculum?
Yeah. On the back of World Book Day, which I'm sure all members of the House joined in celebrations in their school, I absolutely agree with the Honourable Lady and recognise how important it is that children are encouraged to read for pleasure. We know that this does happen in school and is encouraged by schools, and teachers are already encouraging their students to listen to, discuss and read a wide range of stories and poems, books and plays. But also, this can also start, very importantly, at home as well, where parents can show how much they love reading too. And that's why I commend the LBC campaign, Read for Success, Kids Who Read Succeed, which is an excellent initiative to really encourage reading and ensure that all children and parents and teachers get that message.
Listen, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In all 4 libraries in my constituency this week, mid-Sussex babies and toddlers will be enjoying themselves at rhyme time, and I hope this will be the start of many happy years of reading for my youngest constituents. Will the Minister join me in congratulating West Sussex Library Service on its 100th birthday last month? And will she commit to lobbying the Chancellor and the Deputy Prime Minister to ensure that my county council is sufficiently well funded that West Sussex is able to keep its 36 libraries open to the public for another 100 years?
I do absolutely join the Honourable Lady in congratulating their success. We all know how valuable our local libraries are to supporting families, in encouraging children in their families to read, and this is obviously a priority as we really encourage reading for pleasure as much as reading for study, and it's something that clearly we need to see more of and more longevity to, as she rightly sets out.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I completely agree with the Honourable Member for Hampstead and Highgate. The thing that is displacing reading for pleasure among children is smartphones and social media, including in schools. And DfE's own behaviour survey finds that nearly half of pupils in years 10 and 11 report mobile phones being used when they shouldn't be in most or all lessons. The current guidance is not working. So why are the government continuing to block our proposals for a proper ban on smartphones in schools?
Last year, under the previous government, saw the steepest year-on-year drop of children and young people enjoying reading. He should look at the record of his government before pointing the finger. Phones shouldn't be out in schools. It's as simple as that. And that's why heads have the power to impose the rules that suit their school community. Just a year ago, the government claimed their action meant mobile phones were prohibited in schools, and their guidance meant a consistent approach across schools. Those are their words. The Secretary of State said, "We are driving our hard-working teachers and giving them the tools to take action." So, in backing the Tory government's measures, was the Honourable Lady right back then, or is he?
Just.
Question number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Stay.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 10 and 13 together. This Labour government is determined to break the link between background and success, so that where you're from doesn't determine where you end up in life. That work starts in our early years, where we can make the biggest difference to children's life chances. Through our plan for change, we'll get tens of thousands more children, a record share, starting school ready to learn, because children growing up in our country deserve the best start in life, nothing less.
Just.
I thank the Secretary of State for her answer. Can she please confirm what specific steps are being taken to ensure that the plan for change will help those in my constituency of Wolverhampton West who have historically faced systemic barriers to opportunities, such as those with special educational needs, those from ethnic minority backgrounds and those from lower socio-economic backgrounds?
Mr Speaker, in Wolverhampton West and across our country, this Labour government is determined to ensure that background is no barrier to getting on in modern Britain. That's why we will reform the SEND system to make sure that all of our children get the support that they need to thrive. But alongside that, we've delivered the biggest ever uplift in the early years pupil premium. We're rolling out breakfast clubs in our primary schools, and we'll be launching the first phase of primary-based nurseries, making sure that all of our children have access to fantastic early years education.
Justine.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week I visited Herts and Essex High School in Bishop Stortford, Seal School in Hertford and Hertford Regional College in Ware, and at each one I met young people with exciting ambitions for the future. I welcome the action this government is taking to build our young people's confidence and open up opportunity for them. So as we break down the barriers to opportunity, could the Minister set out in further detail how they are supporting young people in constituencies like mine to discover a subject they're passionate about, develop a new skill and find the path that's right for them?
My humble friend has evidently had a busy week in his constituency, and I know he really champions the cause of young people and the need to drive up standards in education. Mr Speaker, through our plan for change, we're starting learning earlier through accessible and affordable early years education. We're making sure that all young people will have the skills that they need to seize opportunity with strong pathways into post-16 learning. But we also want to make sure that right throughout people's lives they have the chance to get on at work, and that's why the changes that I set out during National Apprenticeships Week, cutting red tape to create more than 10,000 more apprenticeships, will make a big difference to adult learners in his constituency and right across our country.
Andrew Snowden.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. In this slogan word salad of a question, it talks about breaking down barriers to opportunity. Now, what many of my constituents want to know is how on earth does implementing an education tax on the independent school sector break down barriers to opportunity? It puts them up for those parents who have scrimped, who have saved, who want to put their children through independent schools. And it is a policy of spite that will hurt the state school sector in return anyway. This government is doing far from breaking down barriers, it is putting up barriers to aspiration.
Mr Speaker, this Labour government is aspirational and ambitious for all of our children, including the vast majority of children who go to school in the state system. Now, I was going to say that the party opposite haven't got very much to say in education, and that is true, but the one area where they do actually have policy is that they would reverse the tax break that Labour has introduced to invest more in our state system. What we need to hear from them is where they are going to find that money to pay for the teachers and the wider support that all of our children deserve. And contrary to all of the scaremongering that we have seen from the private schools lobby, more children at National Offer Day last week got their first choice place. The scaremongering that they've been suggesting just hasn't come to pass.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given that the Plan for Change includes the mission to break down barriers to opportunity and build an NHS fit for the future, many NHS trusts, including mine that represents St Richard's Hospital in Chichester, are reporting that they are unable to offer Level 6 and Level 7 apprenticeships due to a lack of backfill funding, which is often resulting in them handing back the apprenticeship levy. So what steps is the Department of Education taking to address this fundamental flaw in the scheme and ensure that those apprenticeships deliver the nurses and midwives of the future?
Very good.
Mr Speaker, apprenticeships have an important role to play in our system, including in our NHS, and I'm working closely with the Health Secretary to make sure that we are addressing those long-standing workforce challenges left behind by the Conservatives as part of that workforce plan for the NHS. And we want to make sure that all employers are able to take on more apprentices and make sure that we're driving forward in some of those key shortage areas. That's why the changes we're also introducing through Skills England will make a big difference both in addressing and responding to the big skill shortages that we face in our country.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Labour's plan says that the early years is supposed to be the top priority, but a survey by the National Day Nurseries Association finds nursery fees are going up by 10% on average. And they say this is because the government is not compensating them for the costs of the national insurance increase. Will the government rethink this decision, which the Early Years Alliance has described as catastrophic, or is this just going to be another example of a tax on working people?
Mr Speaker, we are investing more in the early years system through the budget with record levels of investment to support families with the expansion that they were promised by the party opposite, but where there was no funding in order to deliver that. What we have also done, Mr Speaker, is deliver the single biggest ever uplift in the early years pupil premium alongside an expansion grant, because what we know is that there are too many parts of the country where parents are not able to access the places that they have been promised. We are determined to turn that around, and that's why the ambitions that we have to roll out primary-based nurseries will also make a big difference to supporting parents in areas where at the moment they experience childcare deserts thanks to the party opposite.
Abdusam Mohammed.
Question 11, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, our Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill will introduce free breakfast clubs in all state-funded primary schools in England and introduce measures to help with the cost of school uniform. Breakfast clubs will save families up to £450 a year, putting money directly back into parents' pockets. Our action is urgent, which is why we're rolling out 750 early adopters from April. Getting on with delivering the change that we promised. Limiting the number of branded uniform items will give parents more flexibility, keeping costs down for families and saving some parents over £50 on the back-to-school shop.
Abdusam Mohammed.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his answer and congratulate the Department on their excellent work in relation to the Child Poverty Task Force. Lesson time and learning are being significantly affected by high levels of child poverty. Having spoken to some schools in Sheffield Central, they tell me that many low-income families are really struggling financially. Will the Minister confirm what specific actions this government is taking to ensure that this Labour government turns the tide on child poverty and puts money back into people's pockets?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. There is no challenge more crucial for this government than tackling child poverty. The task force has started the urgent work to publish the strategy. The strategy will look at levers across 4 key themes: increasing incomes, reducing essential costs, increasing financial resilience and better local support, especially in early years.
Shoka Adam.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parents with SEND children do not wish to send their children to faraway schools, but they have to because of lack of local provisions. If, however, the children are over the age of 16, the cost of transporting them to school is at the discretion of the local authority. Even though education is effectively compulsory until the age of 18, many local authorities, including mine in Leicester South, are now passing this cost entirely onto the parents. Will the Minister commit to including SEND transport costs as part of the work the department is doing to reduce the cost of sending children to school?
I'll happily meet with the honourable member to discuss those issues further.
Madeira Wilson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. With the Child Poverty Action Group estimating that the average parent of a child in secondary school pays over £480 per year on school uniform, the government's move to limit branded uniform items to 3 to 4 is well-intentioned. However, Mr Speaker, there is nothing to stop the overinflation of the prices of those items. A cap on cost reviewed annually would not just guarantee to save pounds and pennies in parents' pockets, it would also give schools the freedom to set their own uniform policy rather than ministers in Whitehall telling head teachers and school governors what to do. So will ministers think again and back the Liberal Democrat amendment to the Children's Wellbeing Bill next week?
I thank the spokesperson for that question. School uniform plays a valuable role in creating a sense of common identity among pupils and reducing visible inequalities. She's made a number of points at Bill Committee on these issues, and we will certainly take forward her views and ideas in the department.
Pippa Haley.
Question number 12, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question. Every child has the right to succeed in education. We publish data termly and review trends, including where pupils with SEND are disproportionately affected by exclusions. We know that some groups of children do have higher risk of exclusions, which is why this government is breaking down barriers to opportunity by ensuring early intervention in mainstream schools for all pupils, including those at risk of exclusion. We are clear that schools have a legal duty not to discriminate against pupils with SEND under the Equality Act 2010.
Pippa Haley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Too many children with SEND in South Cambridgeshire are out of school, not only due to exclusion, but also due to the long waiting times for specialist provision or for alternative provision when the mainstream schools can't meet their needs. I was shocked to hear about Harry, a constituent of mine, who is receiving just 2 hours of forest school a week for the past 15 months as his only education. 15 months. Mr Speaker, what urgent action is the Minister taking to increase specialist provision and the alternative provision so that children like Harry can get the full and adequate education they need and deserve?
Yeah.
I thank the Honourable Member for sharing Harry's story with me, and I know that she's a champion on these issues in her constituency. The Government's ambition is that all children with SEND receive the right support to succeed. The Curriculum Assessment Review will look at how barriers to exclusion can be removed and the high standards supported for children. To further support this vision, the Department announced £740 million for the High Needs Capital Block next year.
Sarah Smith.
A permanent exclusion at primary school should be an almost non-existent occurrence. Any primary-age pupils exhibiting difficult behaviours should undertake diagnosis for SEND, as well as best efforts should be made to understand any trauma that child may have suffered. What is the Minister doing to ensure we build a system which prioritises early identification of needs and quick delivery of interventions so that children don't fall behind?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are absolutely aware that some groups of children have a higher risk of exclusion, which is why we're breaking down the barriers to opportunity to ensure that every child can achieve and thrive. We're committed to ensuring earlier intervention in mainstream schools for pupils, particularly those at risk of exclusion.
Jack Rankin.
Question number 14, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Accountability is a non-negotiable for this government. We know that when standards slip, it is disadvantaged children that suffer. Through Ofsted reform, we're putting an end to high-stakes, low-information headline judgments. In their place, school report cards will provide clear detail on what schools are doing well and where they must improve. High standards must be for every child in every school, so we are increasing the oversight of multi-academy trusts. Our focus remains on standards, not structures.
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm raising this as I have a case in my constituency where a governor feels she was pushed out having raised concerns about senior teaching staff. I understand from last year's Sky News report that this may not necessarily be an isolated incident. It seems the current accountability process potentially involves trustees marking their own homework. I'm a strong supporter of academies, but there must be a balance. Will the Minister commit to bringing a system of accountability and transparency to prevent this happening?
Where concerns around an academy are identified or raised, the Department does work closely with the Trust to ensure that all statutory requirements are being met, and we're also legislating in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill to create a more proportionate route to intervention in the event that trusts may not be complying with legal duties or acting in a way that is not reasonable. But I appreciate the complexity of the issue that the Honourable Gentleman raises, and I'd be happy to arrange a meeting to discuss it further.
Whereas, Mr Speaker, in my constituency of Camborne, Redruth and Hale, a very small number of multi-academy trusts are contributing to a very high level of suspensions and exclusions. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss this matter as a matter of urgency?
I appreciate the concerns the Honourable Gentleman raises, and yes, I'd be happy to arrange a meeting to discuss the concerns that he has in more detail.
Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. One of the key metrics to hold schools and trusts to account is by looking at pupil numbers and seeing how parents vote with their feet. So why is the Secretary of State stopping good schools being able to expand in the Schools Bill? It will stop competition and accountability, it will erode parental choice, and it will drive down standards.
The Honourable Lady appears to have misunderstood both the aims and the impact of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. We recognise that parents must have the opportunity to have good schools in their area, and for schools to be able to set their admission numbers in order to meet the requirements of the local community. And that's why we are expecting local authorities to cooperate with schools in their area, and for all schools to cooperate with local authorities who hold the responsibility to ensure the right number of school places is available in the areas that they're needed.
Brown.
Question 15, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Land-based colleges receive higher funding per student to support delivery of programmes in agriculture, horticulture and forestry, and animal care and veterinary science. The 16 to 19 national funding rate will rise by 3.78% in 2025-26, increasing the funding for these programmes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Kingston Moorwood College in my constituency of West Dorset provides essential training in agriculture, offering degrees, apprenticeships and short courses to equip the next generation of farmers with critical skills. What measures will the Minister take to ensure that farming courses are not underfunded compared with other vocational courses and ensure that agriculture is promoted as a viable career path?
This government is absolutely committed to education for 16 to 19-year-olds and beyond. Extra funding is available for all important skills. Other high-value and high-cost areas, manufacturing and farming and so on, absolutely. We hugely value farmers, and we're committed to investing £5 million in farming budget over 2 years.
Tamanji Singh Desi.
Number 17, please, Mr Speaker.
Where the previous government failed, Labour is getting Britain building again. Our pioneering new home building skills hubs will deliver fast-track training, meaning more opportunity, new homes and stronger growth. The 32 hubs across the country will create 5,000 more construction and apprenticeships and play a part in getting Britain building again. A home building revolution requires a skills revolution. Labour will provide more homes, greater opportunity and stronger growth.
Speaker, having worked in construction for a couple of decades prior to being elected, I am glad the government recognises the importance of the industry and is firmly committed to house building, especially social and affordable housing, to make the dream of home ownership a reality once again for our young people. So while the Conservative governments ducked the difficult decisions for too long, can the Minister outline exactly how the government plans to create the skills and apprenticeships we need so that the homes that Slough families deserve can finally be built?
I can assure my honourable friend that this government is not ducking or diving the tough decisions that need to be made. Home building skills hubs will create more apprenticeships in short occupations such as bricklaying and groundwork. The changes we have introduced to English and Maths will support thousands more apprenticeships to achieve each year, including in construction. This is a government of action, building the skills workforce this country needs, and indeed in Slough.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Level 7 apprenticeships play a vital role throughout our economy, including in the construction industry, and support social mobility. I recently met young, hard-working apprentices in mid-Bedfordshire who wouldn't be able to achieve their ambitions without Level 7. There are concerns about the future of these apprenticeships. Would the Secretary of State take this opportunity to reassure employers and apprentices that she understands the value of Level 7 apprenticeships?
This government has an extremely challenging fiscal inheritance. There are tough choices to take on how funding should be prioritised to generate opportunities for young people to make a start at the start, fulfilling careers. Learners will be funded to completion, and we expect to make a final decision on affected apprenticeships shortly. We are absolutely committed to Level 7 and indeed for people to continue with their education to a good standard.
Joyce Lynn.
Question number 18, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
We have committed £1.4 billion for 2025-26 to continue the current school rebuilding programme, which is rebuilding or significantly refurbishing buildings at 518 schools and 6 form colleges across England. All projects have been given indicative timelines for delivery based on prioritisation of need, and around half have been commenced various stages of delivery activity so far.
Joyce Benton-Flynn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Cross Lane Primary School, Shade Primary School, Brooksbank School, Calder High School, Todmorden High School and Walston Church of England School are among 11 Calder Valley schools to be rebuilt under this government where the last government failed. But can the Minister confirm to me that under this government no children will be left learning in classrooms that are not fit for purpose?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Along with my honourable friend, I'm delighted so many schools in his constituency are receiving significant investment through the school rebuilding programme. Ensuring schools and colleges have the resources and buildings that they need is a key part of our plan to break down barriers to opportunity, ensure every child gets the best start in life.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
can I say to the Minister that the last Labour government, if you may remember, had Building Schools for the Future, £55 billion spent on buildings and IT to transform education. Except buildings and IT don't transform education, Mr. Speaker, and there was global evidence, because building schools isn't a new thing. There was global evidence to back that up. So can the Minister reassure the House we will never have a repeat of that extravagant and wasted programme, but we will make sure that we have functional schools with brilliant teachers able to teach our children?
Mr. Speaker, ensuring schools and colleges have the resources and buildings that they need is key to our mission to break down barriers to opportunity. I'll take no lectures from the party opposite on education.
Come to Topicals, Andy McNay. Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, Labour announced the first 750 schools set to offer free breakfast clubs. Next month, through the clubs, we'll boost the life chances of up to 180,000 children and begin to save parents up to £450. It comes as we're improving the quality of early years education, alongside our department's RISE advisors, supporting stuck schools, driving high and rising standards and bringing schools together to improve attendance. And in National Apprenticeship Week, we celebrated by cutting red tape to unlock 10,000 more apprenticeships every year. At the Department for Education, we are the Department for Opportunity, and we are proving that we are the Department for Delivery too.
Andy McNay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, I met with the head teachers of all the secondary schools in Rosendale. They face many challenges, but unanimous. The single biggest issue they face is a lack of capacity in special schools and alternative provision in our area. Rosendale has no places. Children's complex needs are not being met, and huge additional pressures placed on our mainstream schools. This is the legacy of 14 years of neglect. So can I ask the Secretary of State what steps this government will be taking to address special school and alternative provision in places like Rosendale and Darwin?
Mr. Speaker, I understand my honourable friend's concern and the concern of head teachers in his constituency. Sadly, I hear that story in every part of our country. We inherited, as a government, a system that the previous Secretary of State described as lose, lose, lose. We are investing more into the system. We want to make sure that there is more mainstream inclusion, but we do recognise the need to invest in specialist provision for children who need it most.
So, Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How on earth can the Secretary of State justify spending £90 million on a one-year contract for advertising and media while cutting a £4 million Latin Excellence programme mid-year, a programme which is helping improve school standards in some of the most deprived areas of the country? Doesn't this show that the Secretary of State's priorities are all wrong?
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady was a Minister in the Treasury, and she was responsible for leaving behind the black hole that this Labour government is having to sort out. We faced unprecedented challenges, and where it comes to Latin, we are working with classics associations to ensure that children can continue to study Latin. And it is important that children in our state schools have that opportunity, but they designed the scheme to terminate in February. Maybe she can tell us why that was.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State is spending £90 million on advertising, but she's not just cutting Latin programmes, it's also computing hubs and language hubs and advanced maths. Are these also less important than our advertising budget?
Mr. Speaker, yet again from the Right Honourable Lady, we hear a lot of sound and fury, but no recognition as to the mess that they left behind, that it falls to this Labour government to resolve. We are investing more in early years, more into our schools, more into 16 to 19 education. And yes, some of the investment we do need to make is about making sure that people come forward to train as teachers, particularly because of the chronic issues we face around recruitment and retention because of the mess left behind after the last Conservative government.
Mr. Speaker, Redhall Primary School in my constituency of Dudley is split down the middle by Saw Street. Lead theft from the Victorian roofs, leakages and no real playground is not an environment for children to thrive. In 2010, the Conservatives shelved the plans to consolidate and repair the school at one side of the road. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss reopening these plans?
This government has increased capital funding to improve the condition of school buildings to £2.1 billion for the next financial year. This will include funding for Dudley Local Authority to invest in improving the condition of its maintained schools, including Redhall Primary. Capital funding and programmes for schools beyond 2025-26 will be confirmed following the spending review. I'd be very happy to meet my honourable friend, who is a real champion for children in her constituency.
Rosie Duffield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The University of Kent is the largest employer in my constituency, and they're making yet more redundancies due to the enormous debt they owe to international banks. Will the Secretary of State commit to holding crisis meetings with desperate universities and their creditors in order to help secure more sustainable terms and a potential way out of the financial emergency they're facing?
I recognise the pressures that many institutions across our country face. The last Conservative government regarded universities as a political battleground, not as a public good. We face a big challenge in stabilising the finances of our universities. It's why we have refocused the Office for Students to make sure that they are tackling much more early these challenges that the Honourable Lady describes. But it's also why, Mr. Speaker, I took the difficult but necessary decision to increase tuition fees to ensure that we have more revenue going into our universities.
Houghton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous government failed to build much-needed new school buildings at Dorset Studio School and failed for years to open the proposed Osprey Quay Special School for children with special educational needs. Dorset Studio School urgently needs a new home, and families in my patch are hugely in need of a special SEND school at the Osprey Quay site. So can the Minister outline what steps they are taking to get these two crucial projects over the line?
The feasibility and project costs for these projects are currently being reviewed, and the relevant approvals will be then sought. I will ensure my honourable friend is kept up to date on progress. Ensuring schools and colleges have the resources and buildings that they need is key to our delivery of the mission opportunity and to give every child the best start in life.
Bridget.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Great teaching and great policy saw children in England soar up the international league tables in reading under the last government to become the best in the Western world. I think that the Children and Schools Bill risks this progress. If the Secretary of State disagrees with me, will she put her money where her mouth is and resign if England falls down the international league tables?
It's the same kind of hyperbole we often get from the right honourable gentleman, and you wouldn't know, really, from that question, the shameless sense of pride, the misplaced sense of pride often that they have when you consider that 1 in 3 children are not school ready, 1 in 5 children are regularly out of school, and our scores were dropping. Contrary to what he would suggest, we face big challenges around standards, a huge disadvantage gap. There is a lot that this Labour government is having to turn around to make sure that all children get a great start in life.
Downey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The welcome announcement by the Prime Minister of the last couple of weeks of an increase in defence spending creates both an opportunity and a challenge for the Department as well as for the whole skills system in this country. Will the Secretary of State please outline how she will work with the Ministry of Defence to make sure that gap is filled, and in particular how she will make sure that the Scottish Government in Edinburgh actually takes proper action on defence skills as it's failed to do so over the last 17 years?
My honourable friend is right. The first set of statistics released under the Labour government shows apprenticeship starts, participation and achievements all on the up compared to the same period under the Tories. We celebrated by going further and faster to cut red tape, so up to 10,000 more apprentices can achieve each year. What a clear contrast to the failures we saw under the Tories for 14 years and the continued failure of the SNP. It is time for change in Scotland, and only Labour can deliver that change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday afternoon, a group of 5- and 6-year-old special educational needs children had great fun running circles around their Member of Parliament on the football pitch at Matthew Arnold School in my Spelthorne constituency. Can the front bench please use their good offices to encourage Surrey County Council to continue to fund the Star Player programme, which provides great fun for the children and great respite for the parents?
That sounds like a lot of fun, and I commend him for participating. And indeed, we know that local authorities are increasingly challenged with the funding deficit that the government also left them in terms of supporting what we know are brilliant projects, and I'm sure that they would be keen to support it, and we will work with local authorities on a continuous basis to ensure that children with special educational needs and disabilities get the opportunities they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A new report by London councils predicts a collective decline in demand for reception and Year 7 places over the next 5 years, causing concern about the impact on school standards and pupil attainment. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss this important issue?
Minister.
The government's working closely with local authorities to ensure that all options for utilising space, whether that's for early years provision or SEND provision, merging provision where that's in the best interests of the community, and will continue to do so. And I or my colleague, the Minister for Early Years, would be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss these proposals.
Richard Tyne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Secretary of State confirm how many SEND children are forecast to have to leave the independent sector into the state sector because of the imposition of VAT and fees, and therefore what cost that will be to the taxpayer?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Labour's plans to end the tax breaks that private schools enjoy will invest significant money into state education, and I'm really surprised that the honourable gentleman doesn't welcome the extra investment that will be going into schools in his constituency. Where it comes to children with SEND, where that place is derived through an EHCP, there will be no additional cost. And as I said earlier, the scaremongering that people like him have engaged in is just proving wrong.
Jill Furness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have often raised the importance of further education and the transformative impact it can have. I know the Minister and Shadow Secretary of State shares my belief in excellent education for all, instead of the broken skills system the Tories left behind. To that end, what steps is the Minister taking to ensure students without the necessary qualifications to get onto T levels do not end up falling through the net?
I thank my honourable friend for the question, and she's absolutely right to demonstrate her concern. We want a skills system which provides opportunity and delivers growth. The curriculum and assessment review is looking at how we can ensure there are high-value qualification pathways available for 16 to 19-year-olds. As we continue to reform qualifications, we will consider the review findings and publish this later in the year.
Julian Lewis.
The admirable Hounsdown School in my constituency has, after some delay, been promised a letter by the middle of March releasing funds for the replacement of its crumbling rack roofing. If that letter fails to materialise within the next week, may I appeal to a minister to intervene?
I'll happily take away the right honourable gentleman's concern and make sure that he gets a response as quickly as possible on the matter he raises.
Katie White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the progress the Secretary of State and her team has made? It's clear she's moving at pace to increase opportunities for all. Can I ask her to update the House on what progress she has made and our commitment to deliver mental health support in schools?
Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to improving mental health support and improving access to specialist mental health professionals in every school to help young people achieve and thrive. We will work closely with colleagues in health and the NHS who will lead on services including mental health support teams. They're recruiting 8,500 additional mental health staff to treat children and adults, getting on with delivering the promise we made at the last election.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessment have ministers made, or will they make formally, of the benefits to children's mental health and physical health, resilience and ability to learn of investing in more opportunities for residential outdoor education experiences?
I think the honourable member raises a number of very important points, and enriching opportunities for children and young people is a key part of our breaking down the barriers of opportunity. Very happy to meet with him. He's got particular examples he's wishing to share.
James Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent the rural constituency of Rushcliffe, where parents often raise concerns with me about having limited school options, which almost always involve travelling distances, but only the nearest school involves free transport. Can I ask the Secretary of State what steps are being taken to review school transport costs overall, and whether the limited school options available to rural parents could be considered when updating the home-to-school travel policy?
The Department's home to school travel policy aims to make sure no child is prevented from accessing education due to a lack of transport. I am very keen to understand how well home to school transport is supporting children to access educational opportunity, and I'm working closely with Department officials on this, and I will bear the honourable gentleman's comments and concerns in mind as this work continues.
Gagan Mahendra.
Can I start by wishing you and the House a happy Commonwealth Day?
Conservative-led Hertfordshire County Council has done excellent work in supporting children with SEND, both in my constituency and across the county, while seeing a 27% increase in requests for EHCPs in 2024. How is the Education Secretary directing her department to provide further assistance to councils like Hertfordshire, who are having to find more and more money from their budgets to support students with SEND?
We do absolutely recognise the challenges in the area that he represents. A SEND Improvement Board, independently chaired by Dame Christine Lenihan, oversees progress and provides challenge. We do know the system needs a whole-scale reform, and we are working at pace and will announce that as soon as possible.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Wednesday is Young Carers Action Day. Will the Secretary of State or Minister join me in thanking young carers for all they do and commit to ensuring greater awareness of young carers in schools, something I'd say schools in my constituency of Harlow do very well?
Yeah.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to mention young carers. This government is committed to raising the visibility of young carers, ensuring they have the support they need at home and indeed in education. We champion initiatives such as Young Carer Action Day and the Young Carer Covenant, which further highlights the needs of young carers and the support available to them.
Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I ask the Minister what resources are being provided to schools to support restorative justice initiatives around knife crime, particularly victim-led approaches such as workshops or peer mentoring to engage young people in conversations around knife crime prevention?
The honourable gentleman raises an important point, and we do hear far too many cases of young people being affected by this. I will take away the particular issue that he raises. We are obviously undertaking a curriculum and assessment review. We're looking very closely at relationship, sex and health education and how we empower young people to be discerning and to respect one another and create a values and tolerance-based society.
Ian Lavery.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Over the past 2 years, there's been 40,000, in each of the past 2 years, teachers left the teaching profession. This is due to burnout and excessive workload. Can my honourable friend say what concrete steps the government will take to address this issue, and how can we reverse the exodus from this fantastic profession?
Under the Tories, the teachers were overstretched and undervalued, so Labour is resetting the relationship with the profession. We are properly remunerating teachers by accepting the 5.5% pay rise, which the last government sat on. We're also keen to cut unnecessary burdens on teachers, harnessing AI, supporting children with their mental health, and the Child Poverty Task Force is determined to alleviate those burdens that originate from outside of the school gates.
Jim Shell.
Mr Speaker, what steps have been taken to support voluntary organisations across the United Kingdom, such as Aware in Northern Ireland, to offer education programmes to target depression and related mood conditions within the mental health education in schools? Thank you, sir.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman. He raises the important contribution that voluntary and third sector organisations can play. Here in England, through the consultation around relationship, sex and health education, we're looking at what more we can do to ensure that all young people get the support that they need, including around areas that he identifies.
Chris Hinchliffe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. School staff in North East Hertfordshire work tirelessly in dilapidated facilities to support SEN students, whilst parents face absurdly long journeys to reach specialist schools. Meanwhile, the old Roysia school site in Royston lies vacant. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss the school estate in my constituency and how we can use the Roysia school site to meet local special educational needs?
We are very open to ideas on how we can best use the school estate to meet the needs of young people, including those with SEND. We are determined to deliver a wide range of reforms, and I would be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman, or indeed my honourable friend, the Minister for Early Years, to discuss how we can best use the resource within his constituency for the benefit of all the children that need it.
Final question, Ian Sobb.
Mr Speaker, last week the Department announced colleges will receive only 2/3 of the funding they were promised for the additional 35,000 16 to 18-year-old students enrolled last autumn, a decision that could lead to thousands of prospective students being turned away this September, and that follows a cut to the adult skills funding as well. So can the Secretary of State explain how cutting promised funding
will help address skills shortages in the economy and help deliver the government's growth mission?
Skills are critical to driving growth. I absolutely agree with the honourable gentleman. That's why we are now spending over £400 million more on 16 to 19 education, £100 million more than was announced at budget, including £87 million in in-year growth funding to ensure that places are available where children are needed. And through the reforms we are driving on Skills England, we will make sure where there was once a fragmented skills system, we have a coherent system that supports all of our young people and adult learners too.
We now complete questions. We'll let the front bench change over.